Okay, for 1 second, I want you to pretend you're a deaf mute trapped in your house by a deranged serial killer, and you have no means of outside communication. What actions will you take to survive? In these How to Survive videos, I make use of what the character has at their disposal in the movie and nothing more. If you like these types of videos, please consider subscribing. Alright guys, so the things you can see right off the bat that are gonna really make her suffer later on are: number 1, living alone, so secluded. Now listen, I get it, you're a writer, and it's probably good for you to be away from the hustle and bustle of the big city, but living secluded alone comes with a lot of challenges and problems, and you have to realize that you're completely on your own. Number 2. Second thing is that you have no means of self-protection, no gun, no taser, no pepper spray. You could even have a couple pets, guard animals, support animals, and that would help out a lot. Number 3 is living without any immediate emergency contact capability. Let's say your internet were to go out or your electricity were to go out. Typically you'd have a cell phone, but if you're trying to play it safe, let's say for some reason you didn't have your cell phone. You can get fall alert buttons for $30 or less on Amazon, and some of these don't require Wi-Fi connection. Given that she has 2 disabilities, this would be really useful for her in general, and especially during emergency scenarios. Alright, now let's get into the actual video. We start off by getting an idea of our setting, a secluded home in Forest Dense, Alabama. We then move inside, seeing our protagonist Maddie cooking a dinner for herself. The sounds of food begin to disappear in a dull fade type of sound, zooming in on her ears, giving us her perspective, letting us realize she's actually deaf. She receives a text from her neighbor, asking if she can stop by. Maddie says sure. She moves to the front of the home to let her cat in and sees her neighbor begin to arrive, walking up the driveway. They greet each other, hug, and then the neighbor compliments Maddie's book she wrote. From this we learn she's a professional writer, and the neighbor asks how Maddie makes such good twists and moments in her writing. Maddie explains she has a voice in her head, and this is something that will be a strength of hers later in the movie. During their conversation, we also learn what is happening with our main character, and that's that she got a bacterial meningitis infection, which caused temporary hearing and vocal loss, which eventually stayed permanent in a surgery complication. Suddenly an alarm goes off, loud enough for both of them to hear. We find out this is Maddie's special fire alarm that flashes and is loud enough to cause vibrations she can feel. The cause of the alarm going off happened to be her food in the oven she forgot to take out during their conversation. Maddie apologizes for her mistake, and we jump to later in the day. It's getting dark, and they're sitting on the front porch having a pretty basic conversation about the dinner, and if Maddie wanted to come to the neighbor's house. Maddie kindly says no, and then the neighbor says goodbye and heads home. Panning to the front of the home, we get a shot inside to see what Maddie is up to. She's working on an ending for her novel, and we get to hear her inner voice working through the best ending. She gets distracted thinking about what I can only assume is her ex-boyfriend, husband maybe, I'm not sure. Anyway, she FaceTimes him, immediately hanging up and doing the same thing once again. He calls back and she closes her laptop. She gets to cleaning up the mess from making dinner, and suddenly her neighbor slams on the front door, begging for help. She tries her best to get Maddie's attention, but sadly she doesn't succeed. Okay, let's pause for a second. Something easily avoidable here that could have saved Sarah was having a special doorbell designed for deaf people. This would have gotten Maddie's attention immediately, and together they would most likely be able to keep him outside. Sarah gets hit with a crossbow bolt, and this is when we meet our antagonist, a killer, equipped with a mask and knife. Approaching Sarah, he stabs her repeatedly. This guy's one sick fuck. He moves his sights to Maddie, who still has no idea of the situation inside. He knocks on the glass several times trying to get her attention, and as we know, she won't hear it. The killer realizes this as well, so he moves the body. Maddie returns to writing. The killer makes his way in through the sliding doors behind her, tapping his knife on his chest. His attempts to get her attention futile. Just then, Maddie receives a call on her laptop and the killer backs away, just in time, listening to the call where Maddie's sister chats about Maddie being all alone, how concerned she is about her, and how she wants to make Maddie come back and live with her. Maddie's sister sees something behind Maddie where the killer just took her phone. Maddie turns around, looks and sees nothing, and just assumes it was her pet cat. She sits down again, trying to get the ending of her novel done, when she receives picture messages from her own phone. Viewing the pictures, they were taken throughout various times of the night. The last photo she gets is of her looking at them on her laptop from the front door. She realizes this and struggles to turn her head to the front door, which she sees has been left open. She slowly stands up to approach the door, where she comes face to face with our masked killer. They both bolt for the front door, and she closes it just in time. She then follows him to prevent him from gaining access at any other points of entry, just barely keeping him out. She makes her way to the laptop and tries to call 911. Just before making the call, the power goes out. She tries to connect to her neighbor's Wi-Fi, but unfortunately, it requires a password. The killer, still in possession of Maddie's phone, checks this as well and realizes now Maddie has no way of contacting anyone. This is really bad. This is one smart serial killer. He knew to cut the power and check if she can make the call. Maddie's starting to realize what she's up against. He walks to the front doors and sees the guy slashing her tires. In an understandably terrifying moment, Maddie sheds a tear, but then gets right back to thinking of a way out of her situation. She grabs lipstick from her purse and walks to the front door to write a message that says, "Won't tell, didn't see face, boyfriend coming home." The killer comes to the door, takes off his mask, signifying now he can't let her go. He then looks at the boyfriend part of the message and recites what Maddie's sister said about her being all alone. He knows she's alone. He tells her he can come in anytime he wants and get her anytime he wants, but he's not going to do it until she wishes she was dead. Holy shit. Okay, now we know what we're up against. A deranged serial killer playing games with me. I see three main overall approaches she could take. Run, wait, or fight. I need to be thinking of a way to defend myself, keep him outside, and any possible escape plans. Maddie arms herself with a kitchen knife and hammer. We know that she has access to wasp spray, and likely cleaning supplies or other insect killers. Now, I'm not saying go do this, but I'm sure you've seen the videos of people making flamethrowers out of aerosol cans, and if Maddie could find a lighter or light the stove, she could make a makeshift flamethrower out of it and burn the killer. We also know that she has alcohol because we saw her pour wine for herself at dinner. I think it's a possibility that she has some alcohol equal to or greater than 100 proof. Any liquor falling into this category is flammable. Much like the flamethrower idea, she can make a Molotov cocktail to throw at the killer if she got the chance. She should also set some traps by the windows. He probably wouldn't expect this in a rush and walk into it. She could get some nails down, if she has any, or tape knives and tape them facing upwards, certainly causing him significant injury if he fell victim to it. She walks around the house until deciding to barricade herself in the bedroom. She closes the blinds and waits. She sees a shadow come through the window, and knocking on the window, she slowly stands up to see what it was. She sees her neighbor's corpse knocking on the window like a puppet by the murderer. This rips Maddie apart. This would be traumatic for anyone to witness. After a short time of grieving, she recuperates and thinks of her next move. She remembers Sarah's phone was in her back pocket. If she can somehow get to her and get the phone, she might have a chance to make a call. She thinks if she can set her car alarm off, she can distract him long enough to retrieve the phone. She opens the front door to set her car alarm off, makes sure it attracts the killer, and makes a dash for her neighbor's body. While trying to find her phone, he comes around the corner and runs towards her. She gets back in the window just in time to crush the killer's fingers in the process. He begins to overpower at the window, so she retreats, grabbing the hammer she left in the room earlier, slamming the sharp end deep into his arm, causing a nasty injury. She closes the window. The killer cuts some fabric off her neighbor's shirt to make a tourniquet around his injury, and shows he already took care of the neighbor's phone, making her attempt useless. She did get a good hit on him though, so it wasn't for nothing. The killer takes an earring from the corpse of the neighbor, and Maddie returns to the main section of the home. After some quick contemplating, she goes out on the front porch and makes her way under it, trying to hide from him. She waits for the right moment and tries to make a run for it. She makes it maybe 20 feet or so from her home before he shoots his crossbow at her. She retreats back inside where the killer taunts her for her escape attempt. Okay, I can see why she was deterred by this, but I think she could have easily kept running. He only had a couple bolts left, which take a long time to load, plus he's a really far distance away. If she can dodge and weave, it's more likely that she would get away from the killer. She moves to the loft on the second floor to watch the killer and how he loads his crossbow. She then sees him move to the front of the house, making her next move. She crawls carefully out of the second-story window onto the roof. She throws her flashlight deep into the forest, distracting the killer for a short time. Quickly moving across the roof, Maddie tries to climb down but gets spotted, shot in her leg by the crossbow. She climbs back up to the top of the roof, barely avoiding a shot to her face. The killer starts moving up to the roof where Maddie is ready, grabs his crossbow, and knocks him down. He climbs up again, going after Maddie when she narrowly escapes by making it to the window and closing it. We can tell he's getting frustrated at this point, and sooner or later he's gonna come in. She goes to the bathroom to assess her injury, and predictably it's very bad. It's a direct hit to her upper leg, and this will seriously limit her movement. At this point, she can cause a distraction on the backside of the house. She can make it to the car and drive away. Even though all 4 of her tires are flat, you can drive a decent amount of distance on flats. Higher the speed will increase the damage on the tires, but if it's between that and dying, I'm choosing the latter. You can drive conservatively on 4 flats at 15 to 20 miles per hour, and I think if she wants to push it, she can do 20 to 25. Considering how injured he is at this point, and he doesn't have a gun, and he doesn't have the crossbow, there's almost no way he could catch up to her. She forces herself to clean her injury with the alcohol, which probably hurts like a bitch, but again, she gets up and she's ready to get back at it. This girl's a badass. She grabs the crossbow to figure out how to use it, and despite her best efforts, cannot get it working. Suddenly a man knocks on the front door. Sadly, Maddie has no idea this is happening. The man, who ends up being Sarah's husband, decides to call 911, but just before he can call, the killer hears this commotion and moves to the front of the home, pretending to be a police officer. He gets the neighbor to his knees and asks for identification, and makes up a story about how he responded to a call regarding a break-in in the home. He also says that he was knocked out cold by the alleged perpetrator. He gets the man's phone and does a very convincing fake phone call with 911 dispatch. The neighbor, not knowing any better, asks the killer if he saw the message on the front door, and he says yes, he did, sneakily sliding the man's phone into his pocket. The neighbor notices his bleeding arm, and the killer says the perp knocked him out, causing the injury. Then, to the killer's dissatisfaction, John asks for his phone back. And as the killer is handing the phone to John, he drops Sarah's earring on the ground. John notices. Now he knows something's up. Both of them growing more suspicious of each other as time passes. The tension grows too much for the man, and he decides to make a clever move. Getting the killer to check under a rock for a spare key, he grabs a rock. When distracting him with a comment about Maddie's car, just as he's about to make a hit with the rock, Maddie bangs on the door, drawing his attention away from the killer, which proves to be a fatal mistake. The killer stabs the man right through the center of his neck, where he slowly bleeds out. Out of nowhere, the man with all of his power tackles the killer, where they get into an all-out brawl on the ground. The man gets the killer into a headlock, choking him out. He mouths the words, "Run," to Maddie, so she does just that, when the killer by surprise hit her over the head, crushing her skull with a rock. Whoa, I feel like I've seen this somewhere before. Whoa, John Gallagher Jr. Going back to the killer just before being strangled by the neighbor, bleeds out. It was a good try, man. Sorry Maddie fucked you over. Anyway, instead of wasting more valuable time in her house, she should grab a weapon, run outside, and help John, whether it be killing the killer or making a run for it. We next pan to Maddie listening to her mind's voice at all her possible options. Run. Hide. She comes to a conclusion. Neither of those are going to work. That leaves one option. She has to fight. We move back to the killer, who just barely escaped being strangled. He sits talking to John's dead body and smokes a cigarette. He decides he's going to wait for her to lose more blood before making a move. Just then, Maddie's cat walks up next to the killer. He looks at the tag, thinking it might be some good leverage against Maddie. Just as the killer's about to murder the cat, Maddie lands a clean shot with the crossbow in the killer's shoulder. She runs back to the door and drops one of the crossbow bolts. She races out the door trying to grab it, and the killer slams the door shut on her hand. He then stomps it to pieces. Maddie's in agony. Then the killer says he's coming in. Much to our surprise, Maddie starts laughing. Then she stands up, staring him dead in the eyes, and writes, "Do it, coward," on the window in her blood. It's on now. If she was able to, she should pour soap or other slippery liquids on the floor just to make the man slip on a fast entry. Like with earlier traps I mentioned, she could put sharp objects like glass down where he'd be most likely to slip. Maddie makes it to her laptop and in a last-ditch effort, typing a description of the killer on her laptop, while the killer retrieves a crowbar from the car to smash the glass with. Lucky for Maddie, she got some strong-ass glass doors. Maddie makes her way to the bathroom to have her last stand, and the killer gives up on the door. While Maddie is preoccupied focusing on the bathroom door, the killer breaks in through the window behind her, and she can't hear it. Now behind her, the killer gloats that if he hit her in the right spot, he could make Maddie scream. He chuckles, and Maddie feels it on her neck. Quickly, she does a spin attack on the killer, partially dodging his stab while stabbing him in the process. There's a lot of time where this rule applies, but I think it needs to be said that she needs to hit him while he's down. Every time she gets him vulnerable, she runs. She could take him out during one of those times easily. Running back to the kitchen, Maddie begins losing her sight. She collapses on the kitchen floor, limping due to the recent injury. The killer finds Maddie on the floor, and it looks like he's ready to end it when Maddie picks up the wasp spray on the floor next to her, spraying him in the eyes, temporarily blinding him. She could easily continue to spray this at his face and in his wounds to further injure him, and this would buy her more time to attack him and further lower his energy. While he's struggling to regain his sight, she gets up and activates her special fire alarm, seriously disorienting him. She goes for his knife, but he knocks her to the ground, kicking her relentlessly. He begins to strangle her and she tries her best to get him off of him, but he's too determined, slamming her against the floor over and over. As he strangles her, we hear her pulse begin to slow, and we get shots of her life literally flashing before her eyes. With her last bit of energy, she grabs a corkscrew laying on the floor and sticks it right through the killer's neck. Blood squirts out, and he struggles to breathe before he dies right there. Like I said, this girl's a badass. She has a short moment to reflect before she retrieves the phone from the killer's pocket, where she was able to make a 911 call. We get a few shots of the carnage that took place before we finally see Maddie walk out on her porch, victorious, despite the odds all being stacked against her. She sits with her cat and waits for the police to arrive, knowing that all she's overcome, she can finally breathe a sigh of relief. She has won. Hush came out in 2016 and it was a highly rated film, as well as one of my own personal favorites. I hope you guys liked this video. Let me know if you have anything you would have done differently in the comments, and if you like these types of videos, please subscribe. I'll be doing a video typically once a week. Thanks guys, have a good one.